Hey everybody, it's your boy Mr. D back again with a little more remote learning. We're gonna switch gears a little bit today. We're done with our weather unit. We've got a handful of classes left here in the year, and we're gonna talk a little bit about physics, specifically Newtonian physics. Sir Isaac Newton from back in the day, and this guy was an OG physicist. He made some amazing connections just observing the world around him, and he's got these three big laws that we still used today in physics all the time. The Newton's laws of physics. You'll hear Newton's first, second, and third law, and chances are you've learned about these already, maybe in 8th grade or so. But it bears coming back to because over and over again in our lives, Newton's laws are in play. We see them everywhere. I'm a big fan of Newton's laws, and I love identifying them in the world around me, and that's kind of what we're going to work on doing for the next few classes. Side note, wanted to name my son Newton, okay, after Isaac Newton. Call him Newt for short after the amphibian in the Maine woods, but the wife was not having it. So he ended up being Aaron, aka Lil Ronnie. You're going to see him a little later on in a few classes. We're going to use him as an example in some physics. So let's jump right in. Let's talk about Newton's first law, and we'll work our way right through these laws. It's going to be really important today that you get these notes done in Notability so that you can use them for the assignment that's coming next class. So really important that you follow along today. You open up that note sheet in Google Classroom and you pause the video, go back and make sure you get your notes done today, because this note sheet is going to be very helpful to you when we look at the assignment that I want you guys to do next class. So let's jump right in today and get these notes done. So Newton's first law, let's just write it. Let's get this thing down. So Newton in his first law said objects in motion will remain in motion, and objects, that looks like a B right there, objects at rest will remain at rest until acted upon by, we'll say, an outside force. And at first when you read that, you're like, yeah, okay, but if you get really thinking about it, an object in motion will remain in motion. And if you think about that, most kids will say, well, actually they don't. Objects in motion usually come to a stop at some point. And that's the most amazing part about Newton's first law, is that Newton was able, way back, 300 years ago, was able to go back and say, actually, an object in motion, a projectile traveling along, should travel at its same trajectory forever and never change course. Here on Earth, we know if you throw a ball up in the air, it comes down, but that's because we've got an outside force called gravity, and we've got air resistance acting on that object, and those outside forces actually cause it to slow down. We call that an acceleration, and it comes back to the Earth. But without gravity and air resistance, if you threw a ball, it would continue on a straight line path the direction you threw it forever. And it's pretty amazing to think about that Newton was able to figure that stuff out. He's the reason we can orbit around the Earth these days in a space station. So just a really important dude in the world of physics. We call Newton's first law for short the law of inertia. And inertia is just a fancy term we use for an object's resistance to a change in its state of motion. For example, if you're running really fast in a straight line, it's hard to turn. That's what makes NFL athletes amazing. They're really big, heavy dudes, and they can run and change direction at high speed. That takes a lot of strength because your body has inertia, and the bigger you are, the more inertia you have. We all know that if you've ever tried to tackle a really big person. We know, Kyle from our G3 class. He's a nasty cornerback. He puts people on clamps, and he's really mastered inertia because of that. So, nice work, Kyle. So let's do some real world connections with Newton's first law. Gonna blow your mind here a little bit. So strap in and get ready. Newton's laws are everywhere around us, and this is just really, really good stuff. The first real world connection would be like a car crash. People get whiplash in a car crash. We'll say whiplash is a result of Newton's first law. Okay, so if I'm in a car, boom, here's my car. This is gonna be a nice car. Look at this. Oh yeah, she's a beaut. Yep, okay. And here's my car, and I'm sitting in the car here, and we're driving along, and boom, we hit a wall. The car stops, okay? The key here is that the person in the car wants to continue on the track that they were traveling. That's called inertia. An object in motion will remain in motion. So your body lurches forward, the seatbelt grabs you, and if you watch slow motion videos of car crashes, you'll see that crash test dummy, how their body launches forward and their head, even after the seatbelt grabs them, their head kind of lurches forward. That's all Newton's first law. Your head is traveling forward even though your body has stopped. So seatbelts are an example of, a response to Newton's first law. Back in the day, cars didn't have seatbelts, and when people crashed into stuff, they would go launching through the windshield of their car because of Newton's first law. So Newton's first law helped us develop things like seatbelts. Nowadays, we look at concussions a lot in sports, and concussions happen because of the first law, right? Here's your brain. Here's your brain in your skull. Well, that's a nice skull, kind of. I ran out of room, but there's your brain in your skull. Now, let's say a football player smashes into something. He's wearing a helmet, but even with that helmet on, his head stops abruptly, and his brain travels forward because of Newton's first law. An object in motion will remain in motion, and his brain lurches forward and bumps into the front of his skull, and we get a bruise on our brain. Essentially, we injure our brain tissue, and we can develop a concussion because of that. So all kinds of examples of Newton's first law all around us. Car crash, whiplash is one of them. And then the rolling marble example is kind of interesting, and this is how Newton kind of wrapped his mind around it. But he imagined that a marble at the top of a ramp will remain motionless until pushed. And that would be the outside force we're talking about, right? So that marble would just sit at the top of the ramp forever until you give it a little push to roll it over the edge. And then on a frictionless surface, which we know is impossible on Earth, right? I don't care how slippery you make something, there is always friction and air resistance here on Earth. On a frictionless surface, though, the marble would roll forever. Crazy to think about, right? But if I have here's my skateboarder ramp, and I have a little marble up here, or I got a person on a skateboard. Oh, let's say we got Tommy on a skateboard. Holy cow. Tommy's up here on a skateboard. Okay, here he is. Boom. He rolls down the ramp. Newton's first law says he should roll forever in that direction. An object in motion will remain in motion until acted upon by an outside force. We know that he's got air resistance pushing back against him. He's got friction on the wheels of his skateboard. We try to put nice bearings in there to reduce the friction as much as possible, but there is friction, so we know here on Earth he won't roll forever. But on a perfectly frictionless surface with no air resistance, you should roll forever on the track that you are rolling on. And I want to give you one more real-world connection to Newton's law that always blows people's mind, and I love this one. We've all done this. Let's say you're riding in the car with your parents. I'm going to do an above view. So we're looking down on your car. We'll just use this rectangle for an example. And you take your phone and you put your phone right here on the dashboard of your parents' car. And your car's traveling in this direction. You're going, 25, 30 miles an hour down the road in the car. Your phone's on the dashboard. And let's say mom or dad takes a hard right-hand turn. If you take a hard right-hand turn and you've got your phone laying on the dashboard of your car, what's your phone do if the car turns to the right really hard? And we've all seen this. Your phone will slide to the left across the dashboard, right? That's what it looks like is going on. You'll say, oh, wow, my phone's sliding to the left across the dashboard. But no, that's not what's going on. Let's think about this with Newton's first law. Here's what's actually happening. When you're driving down the road, you put your phone on the dashboard. Your phone is going about 25, 30 miles an hour in that direction, same as the car. But all of a sudden, the car turns. And actually what happens is your phone continues on the same path it was on as the car slides underneath it. Do you see what I'm saying there? So the car's turning, but the phone is actually not. The phone, because of Newton's first law, the law of inertia, is traveling on the same course that it always was. It's traveling straight ahead at the same speed. The car is actually sliding underneath of the phone. So the next time that happens, let's say your mom or dad says, "Oh, wow, your phone slid across the dash there." You could actually say, "Actually, mom or dad, the dash slid under the phone because of Newton's first law." I mean, that's crazy stuff to think about, but it's actually what's going on. So I love Newton's first law. In next class, I'm going to have you guys tune in. There's going to be no assignment today. I just want you to get your notes done, and these notes will be helpful for you for next class. But next class, I'm going to have you watch a YouTube video, probably a Mythbusters episode involving Newton's first law, where they're going to take... they're going to talk about that old famous magician's trick where you can set a table with all the, the fine glassware and plates and everything, and then you can take that tablecloth right out from under and have it all standing there. That's Newton's first law, right? Those are objects resisting a change in their state of motion. An object at rest will remain at rest, and if you can pull that tablecloth out quick enough, they'll just sit right there on the table, but you got to be pretty good at it. So I'm going to have you watch a video next class and complete a few questions. This note sheet will be very helpful to get you through those questions. So again, important that you complete your notes today. I appreciate you tuning in, and stay tuned for our next class where we're going to watch our YouTube video and do a little bit of analysis on there applying Newton's first law.